Good morning. Welcome to Riverside United Methodist worship this morning. It is a good morning to come and to gather for worship or to gather in your homes for worship. It is a good time to be together and to be encouragement for one another, to be strength for one another, to be whispers of peace and just to join in prayer on this day. It's been a very full week, a very trying week. And it is just an important week for us to gather in worship. I invite you at this time, if you're able, to please stand for our call to worship. The Lord rules, the nations shake. They cried out to the Lord and they were answered. To them you were a God who forgives and who sets things right. Bend low at God's holy mountain because the Lord is holy. We offer our time and our gifts to further the Lord's work in this world. And give us grace to follow it. Amen.
Take time to be holy, speak of with thy Lord. Abide in him always, and feed on his word. Make friends of God's children, help those who are weak, forgetting in nothing his blessing to seek. Take time to be holy, become in thy soul. Each thought and each motive beneath his control. Thus led by his spirit to fountains of love, how soon shall be fitted for souls above.
Comes from the book of Exodus 34:29 through 35. Moses came down from Mount Sinai, and as he came down from the mountain with the two covenant tablets in his hands, Moses didn't realize that the skin of his face shone brightly because he had been talking with God. When Aaron and all the Israelites saw the skin of Moses' face shining so brightly, they were afraid to come near him. But Moses called them closer. So Aaron and all the leaders of the community came back to him, and Moses spoke with them. After that, all the Israelites came near as well, and Moses commanded them everything that the Lord had spoken with him on Mount Sinai. When Moses finished speaking with them, he put a veil over his face. Whenever Moses went into the Lord's presence to speak with him, Moses would take the veil off until he came out again. When Moses came out and told the Israelites what he had been commanded, the Israelites would see that the skin of Moses' face was shining brightly. So Moses put the veil on his face again until the next time he went in to speak to the Lord. Our gospel reading comes from Luke 9:29 through 35. As he was praying, the appearance of Jesus' face changed, and his clothes flashed white like lightning. Two men, Moses and Elijah, were talking with him. They were clothed with heavenly splendor and spoke about Jesus' departure, which he would achieve in Jerusalem. Peter and those with him were almost overcome by sleep, but they managed to stay awake and saw his glory as well as the two men with him. As the two men were about to leave Jesus, Peter said to him, "Master, it is good that we're here. We should construct three shrines, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." But he didn't know what he was saying. Peter was still speaking when a cloud overshadowed them. As they entered the cloud, they were overcome with awe. Then a voice from the cloud said, "This is my son, my chosen one. Listen to him." And there be the words of the Lord.
There's an additional gift for you.
Open my eyes that I may see glimpses of truth thou hast for me. Place in my hands the wonderful key that shall unclasp and set me free. Silently now I wait for thee, ready, my God, thy will to see. Open my eyes, illumine me, Spirit divine. Open my ears that I may hear voices of truth thou sendest clear. And while the wave notes fall on my ear, everything false will disappear. Silently now I wait for thee, ready, my God, thy will to see. Open my ears, illumine me, Spirit divine. the children must to share. Silently now I wait for thee, ready, my God, I will to see. Open my heart, illumine me, Spirit divine.
Working on a little project not very long after COVID quarantine that I had been engaged in after catching it. And I was doing what I usually do in projects. I was trying to get things to come together, and I was spending a little time looking for something that I'd lost or misplaced. That's a common thing. The thing that I was looking for that I'd misplaced was a 3-inch stovepipe elbow. I was looking, trying to find where I put that. And as I was doing that, my wife was doing whatever she was doing. And all of a sudden, I heard her laugh and I saw her smile coming my way. If you've ever wondered what that little bit of COVID brain fog is like, it's a lot like when your spouse comes and shows you the 3-inch stovepipe elbow and then shows you the picture of where she found it in the fridge on top of the fruit drawer. Thankfully, that fog goes away, at least for most people. I am praying for a friend for whom the fog isn't going away very quickly, and it has something to do with inflammation in the spinal fluid that creates some of that fog. I think fog would be a fair way to sum up the last couple of years that we've been living through together. Ask any American what it means to be American, and goodness knows what those answers will be. This last week, for a couple of Americans, it meant when they didn't get their hamburger, they shot the guy who was serving them in the head and then kicked him in the face when he was down. For another, it meant that at a McDonald's, he told his 4-year-old son to shoot at the police officers. For Russia, it means being an American means right now being part of a country so divided and weak that it was safe for them, they thought, to begin the invasion of Ukraine. It's the third attempt at that invasion, and this time a no holds barred invasion. Nationally, we seem to be living in a fog so thick that we can't seem to get our bearings, and we just chase after our preferences in the fog. And I expect it was to escape the fog of his day that Jesus went up the mountain, to find a space to be alone. And he also took with him Peter and James and John because he knew he wasn't the only one living in the fog, because he knew they too needed to get away and be with him and be with God and gain a clarity of vision for what was to come next. Jesus had claimed his mission. One of the ways he put it is, I have come that you may have life and have it abundantly. He talked about freeing the captives and giving sight to the blind. He talked about blessing the poor and blessed the poor and the poor in spirit, and blessed those who were humble and promised that they would inherit the earth. And he blessed and comforted the weeping. But like us, Jesus was living in that world where there were so many ideas that people were chasing after, so many things they wanted, like freedom from the Romans or freedom from Herod or ridding the world of tax collectors. Some were trying to enforce the religious laws with such zeal and such stringentness that it felt like vengeance. And there were still others who were focusing on trying to get the world to fear God again. And Jesus would go away, and this wasn't the only time, but he would go away to be with God. And to hear that voice speak into his heart about his purpose, which was extreme, with the opposite of leading people to fear God again. It was leading people into God's love and helping people be able to encourage others with that love. So James and Peter and John went along, and Jesus cared deeply about his followers then. He cares deeply about his followers now. He knows we need a time to focus again, to see more clearly, to be refilled with a sense of awe and wonder and love and hope. We don't face our struggles alone. That was part of the reason Jesus took James and John and Peter along. A reminder we don't face our struggles alone. We are part of a history. Moses and Miriam and Ruth and Naomi and Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and Rebekah and Jacob and Rachel. All these people God walked alongside in the time of their trials and their challenges. Scripture speaks of Jesus' face radiating light like Moses and his clothes radiating light. And one translation says of that cloud that was read about that overshadowed them, a bright cloud overshadowed them. James, John, and Peter, they wanted to commemorate the moment. They wanted to build a museum, something like this one, a shrine, a place where they could celebrate what they had seen, what they had heard, where they could stay, a place where they could linger. That's what we want to do with the best of times, is linger there, because it's safe to linger there. I served in a community where there was one particular church that was extremely strong. It was so strong that it birthed another church in the same community. One was on the east side, one was on the west side. The new church was on the east side. And for 20 years, it was the church where people who were young, who were motivated, who were energetic, would go and be part of a Christian community and go on mission trips and do everything that seemed like a new church would do, because it was a new church. And then came that time. I don't know exactly what year it began to happen, but then became that time when churches started thinking about putting screens up in their sanctuaries. And it started to happen in some churches and not in some churches. And lo and behold, this cutting edge church of the community, suddenly they found a place to dig in their heels, and it was over screens and over any technology in the sanctuary. For 20 years, they had been the church that was just taking off with growth, and suddenly some other upstart congregations came in, and they became the places where the new people in the community and the young people in the community, the energetic people in the community would go. And it wasn't just about the screens, but it was about a church that kind of forgot where it began, that forgot its mission to befriend people with Christ-like love near and far. And how to do that just keeps changing in this world. Our district superintendent, Lori Kantanen, sent out an article recently. And it's an article about the last 5 years or so, especially the last 3 years. It's an article about why people who enter into a congregation or that are new to a congregation often don't hang around within the congregation, or visit a few times and don't even become part of the congregation. New people, according to that article, leave because of a lack of friendship. It sounds almost impossible in a church, a lack of friendship and a lack of caring. And yet the article goes on to describe people who are longing for community where it's safe, a community where they can just be themselves, a community where they can find sanctuary from some of the pressures of the world and the divisions of the world, where relationships are more important even than being right, and where long term people are eager to befriend strangers. I heard somewhere once that each of us is like a Lego. Not hard to step on that. That's a whole nother story. But a Lego with those 8 little prongs sticking up, and each of us does really good with about 8 people. And those are the people we gravitate toward, especially when we get into a church or a social setting and we know them, we have good, strong relationships with them, and then enters a new person with an empty Lego and they're looking to connect. How do they connect? One person in one meeting, I remember him saying, well, you find them a person who also has an empty Lego, and then you get the 2 empty Lego people together. It's kind of like matchlego.com